The weak leaders of the world are the one who try to tell people, everybody what to do and to try to control everybody. And the
Yep.
great leaders of the world are the ones who kind of set very clear guidelines, trust people, and set them free.
Tim Draper,
founder of Draper Associates and Draper University, co-founder of DFJ Draper Fisher Jurvetson,
early investor in Tesla, SpaceX, Hotmail, Skype, and Baidu,
and one of the most influential venture capitalists and advocates of Bitcoin and blockchain innovation in the world.
Today on the show, we're joined by a man who shaped the future more times than most people update their phones. He's a third-generation venture capitalist, but make no mistake, he didn't coast on legacy. Through his own initiation and efforts, he's been the early fuel behind billion-dollar giants like Tesla, Robinhood, Twitch, Baidu, and SpaceX. He backed SpaceX when private space travel was a punchline, and he's still betting on what's next. His name is Tim Draper, and here are 3 things that you need to know about him. 1, he spots world changers before the world notices. His portfolio is a cheat sheet for the future: electric cars, private rockets, online finance, live streaming, and yes, even crypto. He bought 30,000 Bitcoins way back in 2014. He's building the next generation of founders through Draper University. He's trained over 6,000 entrepreneurs from 100 different countries, launching 1,500 companies and 7 of those being unicorns. He's broadcasting innovation to the world as a host of Meet the Drapers. His family-backed startup pitch show has run 7 seasons and reached tens of millions around the world. In this series on our podcast, it's all about billion-dollar founders and the minds behind world-shifting ideas. Tim doesn't just fund those ideas, he helps launch the people bold enough to build them. Let's dive in. Tim, how you doing?
Doing great. I don't know whether you said 7 or 70 unicorns. We've seeded about 50 unicorns.
50. Okay, I'm glad you
About
corrected
50.
me on that. I'm glad
Yeah.
you corrected on me. Yeah, that's actually very impressive. Yeah.
Great. Everything's great. What was the question?
No, I was just, excuse me, I was just asking how you're doing.
Doing great.
Good.
Hanging out here in Silicon Valley and meeting entrepreneurs. We're doing this fall, we call it the Draper America Tour. I started this show called Meet the Drapers, and we go all over the world interviewing entrepreneurs, and then it's sort of a competition up to the finale. And we decided that this year we would do just US.
Yeah.
And this season we would do just US. And so we're doing a Draper America tour, going all over the US from city to city, looking for those great entrepreneurs. And we'll do the show in each city. We'll meet with influencers in each city and look for entrepreneurs wherever they may be. Very exciting. And then we'll put them up on Draper TV. That we have a little bit of a network. In fact,
Yeah.
maybe we should put your network up on Draper TV. We'll have.
I would love to. I'd love to. I'm curious, and this was a question I was going to save for later, but we're on the topic now. Where do you find the highest concentration of the most impactful entrepreneurs? In which city?
Oh, it's clearly in the Silicon Valley. I mean, I think that this is where the highest concentration is. But outside of here, there's some great surprises. So if you go to Dubai or El Salvador, you see a lot of Bitcoin and crypto entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
If you go to a place called Prospera, which is really a country within a country in Honduras, you will find some of the most innovative healthcare innovations.
Yeah.
If you go to, interestingly, down in Latin America, in Buenos Aires, there's a lot of interesting space and transportation companies that are happening. Around the US, I guess I'll find out where all those are. If India has a slew, pretty much the way China did before, they have a slew of really interesting software and AI companies and a lot of Me Too's. So we're seeing really interesting things happening all over the world, but probably the highest density is in the Silicon Valley, Austin, Texas, where you used to be.
Yeah.
Florida, wherever freedom reigns, entrepreneurs follow.
Wherever freedom flies, it's so true. I just interviewed last week Dr. Hiradani from India. He built a city inside of Mumbai that's like a high-end city that's called Hiradani Gardens, and it houses 50,000 people. Now it does. They started in the 80s. It was just swampland, and he had this vision to build a kind of a luxury, upper-class type of city in the middle of Mumbai, and has done an amazing job. And now other countries are actually trying to model that. And and fascinating conversation with him. Phenomenal individual.
This all sounds very familiar. We just did a whole India tour. We visited all the cities in India or all major cities in India, and filmed Meet the Drapers there. And Hiradani really rings a bell, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm blanking.
I'm sure the name maybe at least crossed your path if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
I like it. I like it when they create entrepreneurial cities.
I know. I mean, you wanted to do that, actually. You wanted to create an island, right? An entrepreneur little mini country.
Yeah,
What
I've done
happened
it
to
or I've tried to do it in many different ways. I bought an island in Africa. That has been less successful. I invested in Prospera, the country outside. I studied all those islands that are all those countries that were being created 11 miles offshore. I invested in Spacecoin, which is actually a blockchain that can actually operate in space. So it can be kind of a new kind of country in space.
Wow.
What I've noticed in the world, and actually the data is there to prove it, is that wherever there's freedom and capitalism, countries go and grow well, and they feed their people and they take care of their housing and food, clothing, and housing all seems to be taken care of. And then when a country is more controlling or more socialist or has too many regulations, they usually go flatline and their people start to starve. And so I'm always looking to push the edge of what a country can be and how it can improve.
Yeah.
We even created Draper Nation, which is kind of up in space, in cyberspace, I guess, and in hopes that down the road we can provide all kinds of government services in the cloud so that they don't have to be monopolies.
Yes.
And they can provide good service at a low cost.
Yeah. What are some of the problems that came up with creating your own country? The idea sounds fantastic. Implementation is always something else, right?
We need distribution first. And so we're offering not much value. We don't have a lot of value to offer. So really it's just join Draper Nation, and eventually we'll get there.
Yeah.
Longer term, though, we're hoping to provide most of what governments provide. Governments, most of what they provide is insurance and security. And if you can do that in the cloud, you will provide a lot of what local and national governments provide.
If you were so say you have to recommend to somebody who's entrepreneurial to spend the next 20 years in a city or a country outside of the United States with the most opportunity, where would you tell them to go?
I would tell them to go to the Draper Innovation Index, because the Draper Innovation Index lists all the countries in order of how friendly they are to innovators. And the ones that are on the top, they've moved around, but generally the US is on the very top. But number 2 has been everybody from Switzerland, Singapore, Great Britain, and Canada. All 4 of those have been near the top. I think those are probably the 4 places that I would focus on. On the other hand, if you're a true innovator, you might find your way to some place like El Salvador, where they've got a Bitcoin economy, or Prospera outside of Honduras, where they're really building something of great value. So if you're a real builder or a real innovator, you would take one of those. I know other countries like, Mongolia and Palau and others are really doing what they can to encourage entrepreneurship, but they've got a long way to go.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the United Emirates.
Oh, well, you're talking about 20 years, and the UAE has some really good laws now for innovators, but it could swing another way.
It's true.
And they aren't near the top, mostly because they're not democracies. But I would say Dubai is probably one of the most innovative cities in the world. And until recently, all the great Bitcoin entrepreneurs were going to Dubai.
Yeah.
Now they're starting to come back to the US because the US is starting to realize that they were losing all the innovators.
Yeah.
Now they've got a better set of regulators in there. They're opening things up and encouraging more innovation.
I went to Dubai for the first time about 6 months ago, and I was incredibly surprised. First off, the city's like 50 years old, and it's very developed and safe and established, clean. And what I felt there, and I'm curious if you would agree.
And modern, right?
Modern. Yeah, like the subway stations, the floor is clean enough to eat off of. Like I was so impressed. And I'm curious if you felt similar, but the feeling that I felt there there was like a land of opportunity. And I thought, this is what it must have felt like to land in New York in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Like what the idea of opportunity in America maybe used to feel like when it was new. I'm curious if you'd agree with that, or you have a different perspective?
I feel that in a lot of places, they're still driven by a king.
True.
It's just that that king has been very friendly to innovators and builders, and that city has been completely transformed. Because if you'd been there, I don't know, when was I first there? Maybe 20 years ago. It was a desert.
Yeah.
There's maybe one interesting hotel, and now it looks like the future.
Yeah,
It's
it
really
does.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so that king and all the people who are helping build Dubai have, just by saying go ahead, it has created really one of the great cities of the world.
Yeah.
I have found that the weak leaders of the world are the one who try to tell everybody what to do and to try to control everybody. And the
Yeah.
great leaders of the world are the ones who kind of set very clear guidelines and then trust people and set them free.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what the king of Dubai has done. He's our king of,
Emirates,
I guess
yeah.
there's a sheik in both places, but the leadership in Dubai, and Saudi's doing it too now. They're
Yeah.
starting to really open up. They had kind of a long way to go from a cultural perspective. They really had a long way to go, but they have opened up as fast as any. So MBS has really driven huge change in Saudi. And I don't know if you drop down to Riyadh, but it's starting to look the same way as Dubai does.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet, but I'll definitely want to. Okay. Oh, I've studied Richard Koch's book called The Star Principle, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but basically it talks about how to find, Richard Koch is the author of the 80/20 principle, how to use that in business to find the unicorns that he invests in and to make money off of. And so there's always a strategy, right? And so looking at your resume, you have Hotmail, Skype, Tesla, SpaceX, Twitch, Robinhood, Coinbase, DocuSign, Ring, Baidu, Ancestry, Twitter, Solar City. Like you can't compare that to anybody with their investments. Like there's very few people that are knocking it out of the park. I'm curious, and so what I've studied with Richard Koch is he looks for high growth market, be the first person to the market, and at least 10%, but hopefully 30% growth on growth annually. And I'm curious, what are your principles when you look for a company to invest in?
So I think he invests way later than we do.
Okay.
I invest when it's two guys and a dog or a girl and a cat or whatever. I mean, just getting started. And when I do, there are certain things I look for, and I'll get into those. But I think the most important thing for a venture capitalist to do is to forgive yourself and not to have to be sure.
Okay.
Willingness to fail allows you to succeed much bigger in venture capital. So the things we look for they tend to be more unique. So if you do a Google search, instead of seeing 100,000 companies doing the same thing, you'll see maybe 3. They're somewhat controversial a lot of the time, or they seem a little crazy. Backing Tesla when no successful car company had been started in the US for 50 years.
Yeah.
Or starting SpaceX when all space travel was really driven by countries.
Yeah.
Or starting Skype when it was two guys who were considered outlaws because they created Kazaa and the music industry made them persona non grata. Or starting Hotmail when it was like the first company to ever give anything away for free.
Yeah.
The idea of creating a company and giving something away for free was ludicrous.
And
then I came up with that viral marketing thing, and then company almost went broke because the servers were on fire. They were going so fast.
Yeah.
And we kept having to buy new servers, and the business spread so fast it was costing us a fortune. And Baidu, that was China. I was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist to even dip his foot into China. And I was also the first one to get out of there when President Xi started to lay down the law. And it was where I came up with this theory that the weak leaders are trying to control everybody.
Yeah.
And the strong leaders are the ones who trust them and set them free. Yeah, so I've been able to look at our past and project into our future. And so each time I look at an entrepreneur, I think, like, is this that kind of thing that's a little bit unusual, controversial, maybe opportunistic, but maybe more just, and does it have real legs, long-term legs? Those are some of the things I look for. And the team kind of, there is some magic to evaluating teams. Looking at markets, the way I look at markets, is it some new technology being applied to an industry that has been dominated by oligopolies and monopolies who are providing bad service at a high cost? So is it going after big pharma? Is it going after big banks? So big pharma, you're seeing a big, transition to bio from chemo.
Yeah.
It's going to be a real change. You're seeing more personalized medicine. If you think about banks, you see that that Bitcoin has completely transformed the banks. Before Hotmail, the post office was the dominant supplier of communications, written communications. And before Skype, it was long distance carriers where you used to pay $5 a minute to talk to Europe.
Yeah.
And so these were really kind of revolutionary in that they were taking new technologies and applying it to industries that had monopolies and oligopolies that really were providing medium good service at a very high cost. So that's what I look for. Big government. We've got a bunch of investments that are potentially going to transform the way governments work. Energy, we did a whole bunch of things in energy. The oil business still seems to have a pretty good stranglehold on energy, but we've done a lot there. And we've made a few bets on insurance. None have really paid off, but I know big insurance is ripe for transformation. I know K-12 education and higher education are both run by monopolies and oligopolies, and they're ripe for transformation. And there's some amazing technologies. There's Bitcoin, there's the blockchain, there's artificial intelligence, there's cloning, there's marketplaces. There's so many things that are happening, viral marketing or network effects, so many things that are happening in technology that are potentially changing the way we all can operate. And my son says AI is going to take all our jobs. And so I think if you think and he does it kind of tongue in cheek, and he realizes that all jobs will change.
Yeah.
So if you think AI is going to take your job, you're probably right. If you think you're going to take your job and turn it AI, you'll keep your job.
Yeah. I like that. I like that mindset. You mentioned when you look for investments, you look for something with long-term legs. What does that mean exactly?
I remember, let's see, Robinhood. We seeded Robinhood. And the real innovation there was basically that you could do a trade on your phone, a stock trade on your phone. But the legs there are all the other services that the company's going to be able to provide. So they give you free trades, free stock trades. But then they add all these other services, and each of those services is kind of transforming what stock ownership is. And they're getting involved in all those fields. We backed Coinbase. We saw that it could trade Bitcoin, and that was a big deal. But you could also see that other cryptocurrencies would flourish, and Bitcoin would have many, many other services as it transformed banking and commerce and wealth holding and the way investments would be made and finance, and all those things were going to be transformed. And so it hit all of those things, and it was an early leader there. So that's what we're kind of looking for, is does it evolve to something that can continue to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger?
Okay, makes sense. One of the things I learned about you is that I find fascinating is that you're a third generation VC, and there's probably very few third generation VCs in the world. Do you know any others actually?
Yeah, but I don't know a lot of fourth generation, and I have 3 children who are venture capitalists too.
Wow.
My grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist in the world.
Wow.
And it was really just him. There were 2 generals, General Draper and General Dorio, on the East Coast, and they both started these venture businesses. And then my dad took it and really ran with it. He was a real pioneer in venture capital, did some extraordinary work first with his own SBIC, then with Sutter Hill Ventures.
Yeah.
And then later on, he was the first venture investor ever in India.
Wow.
So he really has had quite a career. And then my two sons and one of my daughters are all venture capitalists, and they've done extraordinary work. My son Adam runs Boost, and Boost is a leader in deep tech investing. My son Billy worked with me, helped me relaunch after I left DFJ to do Draper Associates, and then has been successful. He spun out and did his own called Path Ventures, and they focus on simplicity is the best way for me to describe it for the consumer.
Yeah.
And my daughter Jessie is a real leader and a driver of women and women entrepreneurs. And she has built I think she's probably the primary LA female venture capitalist.
Wow.
From Los Angeles. So
that's a great legacy.
So the family's in it. We
Yeah.
live it. We breathe it. We love entrepreneurs. We think that they really do make huge transformations. When you have kind of a wild idea, you kind of need somebody else to say yes.
Yeah.
Before you feel like you can really do it. And that's what we do.
Can you point out anything specifically that you learned from your grandfather that really kind of encompasses the way that you invest today?
Yeah, he said it to my dad. My dad said it to me. He says, it doesn't matter who's buying and who's selling. It's the personal connection that matters.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. So when you do a deal with somebody, you're both better off and you have this personal relationship. If the deal goes bad, maybe that hurts the relationship, but it's still, there's a bonding process there. If it goes well, you have a friend for life.
Yeah.
And my dad passed that on to me. I passed it on to my kids. I hope they take it to heart. My dad of course, he was my primary mentor, he and my mom. So I probably have a million things that he's put into my head that I've used. He always wants to make sure that the deal works for everybody. I think that's important. He also is very big on understanding people's financial incentives. I think that's a valuable part of what his dad has sort of brought to me. And he doesn't look at things as the way others would look at it. He's comfortable saying something that may not fit the mainstream. So I think that's something that Dad has brought to me. And I've really flourished in that world.
Yeah.
And I think maybe what I've brought to my kids is it's okay to fail. It's okay to take some hits. They saw me try to transform California into a state that could compete with the other states by turning it into six states and
yeah.
making people like the government accountable to the people. And they saw me fail there. They saw me fail with 3 Californias. They saw me fail with basically all the political things I've done, the school vouchers. They've also seen me make investments that failed, many investments that failed. You know, we had some early failures that they got to see and some later failures. And I think that helps them think about their own careers and lets them think that they can take some chances.
Yeah.
And not sweat it too much.
Yeah, I think when the social pressure is off somebody's shoulders to know that it's okay, quite often they perform better because there's not that anxiety that could be on somebody's shoulders. I liked this idea, or a bit of this idea. You talked I heard you speak about abolishing the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. And curious if you still think it's a good idea and how would it change?
Yeah, I think there's some combination of educating the investor and read everything you're going to sign. How about that? Or just understand the finances of the company you're about to invest in. Understand the risks of what you're about to invest in, and then take responsibility. The SEC was formed in 1933. Think about what people were thinking about. That was after the biggest crash in history. Mm-hmm. The markets just crashed. People lost their homes. People went completely broke. They thought they had money and it was gone.
Yeah.
And so what happens then is regulators get very aggressive and they start putting too many restrictions on people. And those too many restrictions are fine for the short term. But we're now 80 years into the 40 Act and the 33 Act, or I don't know, 40 Act, maybe a little less. And those laws aren't even relevant anymore.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like there should be, every time they create a new law, it should have a 40-year sunset. And every time they create a new regulation, it should have a 20-year sunset.
It's a great idea.
so that people can, so no law lasts more than 2 generations without having to be recreated, reinvented, because the
That's
world
genius.
evolves.
Yep.
I mean, I think the US lost about 10 years of innovation because the SEC was applying 1933 and 40 rules to a 2009 innovation in
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yep.
Yeah, Bitcoin blockchain, all those new technologies, airdrops, all these cool things were happening, and they had to be geofenced outside of the US because the US government couldn't get out of its way.
Yep.
And I think regulators should also think in terms of stay put until you're really going after a problem that affects a lot of people. And then you can start thinking about how to regulate and think in terms of human motivation and incentives, which is harder to think about than just thou shalt not do this.
Yeah.
I think you're better off giving people proper incentives than you are financial incentives than you are saying you absolutely cannot do this under any circumstances, because that really hurts business. So so the SEC could be dropped. Now, in conjunction with that, you could have an AI training program and test to get people to allow them to be investors. And what that would do is make it so that they attained enough knowledge so that they were making the right calls. I feel like it's so thwarting. It stunts the growth of an economy that, some 22-year-old, just because he doesn't have $1 million, can't invest in private companies. And they tried to improve that with the Jobs Act, and Congress had the full intention of making it easy for people. But then the SEC and others dragged their feet so much that they added so many regulations that they actually hurt the program enough to make it almost impossible to do a crowdfund. They make it very expensive and very difficult. So
Yeah.
I would say if you dropped it, you'd have to drop it gradually.
Yeah.
But I think you could drop it and then something else magical could come in its place that could make all of us a lot better off. And the America way is really that you can go rags to riches. And if you're limited in what you can invest in to just the public companies, and the public companies, they have to be in the billions, you don't get any of that 0 to 1 acceleration in money.
Yeah.
And so it's keeping the rags to rags. They're not allowing and they're also keeping the rich as rich.
Yep.
I feel like more fluidity in the economic system is really what America, at least, is all about.
Yeah,
And
I would agree. Yeah.
and we have some real limitations. And I think what the government is always torn between providing a safe harbor for people and allowing them to do interesting things. And I think the bridge there is all education.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I guess there'd be an innovation in there, maybe a training and a test for investors. And that, you pass that test, then you're allowed to
To invest.
do what you like.
Yeah,
And
that
then
makes
you
sense.
then you suffer the consequences too, either way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fair. Well, I've got you on the microphone here. I've got to talk about Bitcoin and crypto a little bit more. And you bought 30,000 Bitcoins in 2014. I started looking at Bitcoin in 2014. I think it was back then like about $800 a coin, roughly ish, or right around there. And
Yeah, I bought 40,000 before that, or at least I thought I had. And
did you lose them?
when it was about 6, when Bitcoin was at about 6.
Oh, wow.
But there were all sorts of problems culminating in the money going into Mt. Gox. There were the guys who made the chips that would mine front ran the guy I invested with. It was a lot of crazy stuff going on there. And I'm pleased because after having lost that Bitcoin, I did a lot of research and it really helped me think about what Bitcoin might be good for, because it didn't, after Mt. Gox stole all that money, it didn't go away. It just dropped in value by about 15%. And I thought, whoa, people really need this. And then I did a lot of research and I realized, oh yeah, they're buying guns and drugs with it. But it turns out all those people were getting caught because the blockchain keeps perfect records.
Yeah.
And then I realized that they were also using it for remittances. Big companies were able to pay people internationally easily with it. The unbanked were able to get employed and be paid in Bitcoin. The unbanked were now able to create their own economy. All those things were happening. And I thought, wow, this is just so good for the world. And then I bid over market when everybody else was bidding under market for the Bitcoin in 2014. And I bought it 632, market was 618. And it went straight down, like it had one tick up and then it was down to 180. And so I looked like a total idiot, like I had just sort of really blown it. But I kind of held on and kept believing, even bought more because I thought, no, I think it's just a matter of time. The world is going to see this. It's better technology. It creates more wealth around the world. It brings a lot of people out of poverty because every time you have a leap of some sort, anthropological leap in currency, people get richer. When you went from shells to gold, people got richer. When gold to the promise of gold, people got richer. Promise of government support, people got richer. And now Bitcoin is just promise built into software, hundreds of thousands of computers all focused on making sure that everybody keeps a perfect ledger. You now have a way better currency. And when the US was trying to regulate out of it, I think those politicians were just dead wrong because what they were doing is saying, hey, as our country, no, we're going to, yeah, sure, England has gunpowder, but France is too proud. And so they're just going to fight guns with knives. It's
exactly.
It's
That's
like,
a really good analogy.
I'm gonna keep fighting the good economic fight, but the most transformative technology in the world that's ever happened in finance, we're gonna keep out of that.
Yeah.
That's what they were saying. And that really hurt the US for about 10 years. And now I'm really pleased that they've seen the light. And now it's going to be very difficult for a politician not to see the light because about 30% of all donations going into the political, I know, into Trump's candidacy and into a lot of the other people who have won, 30% of that money is coming from crypto.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's impressive. Yeah, and it will be hard for them to deny it with those type of statistics. Tim, I've got just a couple more questions. One, what makes you think that, or why do you think that you're so good at picking winners? Do you think this is a learned skill or if it's something inherent in you?
God, I've never really thought about it that way. I just keep trying. I keep going and trying and learning as I go. But I think deep down, I'm an entrepreneur. And I think I feel the entrepreneur when I see it. When I see an entrepreneur, I empathize. I understand the entrepreneur. Weirdly, I have a harder time translating for limited partners.
Okay.
So my investors usually take several funds before we are able to bring an investor on. Because at first they're saying, wait, what? You're gonna what? How? I realize you've got great returns, but this doesn't make sense. The idea of having a willingness to fail occasionally, that really scares off investors. But it sure encourages more entrepreneurs. So I've chosen my path there. And I feel them. And I'm always looking for how can we improve the world and how we can grow the global economy at a faster rate. And the biggest drags on an economy are usually regulations. That's the biggest drag. The second biggest drag is government spending because they spend less efficiently than the private sector.
Yeah.
So we should be very careful about government spending. I think that should be watched very carefully. And because it's inefficient and really every dollar the government spends it would only cost about 30 cents in the private sector. So the private sector really does a much better job of creating jobs, of creating wealth, of creating a great economy, and the government does not. And that is, there is some return on the government's money, and a lot of it is tied to insurance and that kind of thing. But government spending as a percentage of GDP in the US has grown really at an extraordinary rate from 1900 to now. This is all government spending, not just federal. It's gone from 8% of GDP to 52% of GDP.
Wow.
So more than half. And so it's like we're cutting off the air slowly to the golden goose.
Yeah, and that's worrisome. Tim, 3 of your favorite books.
Boy, I really loved reading Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. I thought that was fabulous. I like my own book, How to Be the Startup Hero.
That one, you can't mention that one. You gotta do. We'll put that one as number 1 and then the other.
Oh, I liked it. I liked writing it. I like my dad's book, The Startup Game. That was terrific. My son wrote a book. It's called Breakfast with Pops. That's the breakfast that he had with my father.
Nice.
The other ones that I think, oh boy, I love the book Sapiens.
Great book.
It's really extraordinary. It's a way of looking at anthropological change, and
Yeah.
it really puts a perspective in there on you. Right now, I'm reading The Body by, what's his name?
I haven't heard of that one.
He's kind of a character. He writes in a fun way. The ones I've read the Bible, the Koran, the half of the Book of Mormon, the Book of Mao, the Book of, I like those, the sort of the ones that have changed people's lives a lot.
Yeah.
Incidentally, Mao was really the reason for China's suffering for about whatever it was, 40 years. The economy under Mao actually shrunk. Over all those years he controlled China, it shrunk. If you the Koran's fascinating.
Yeah, I read that.
It's like a big legal document.
Yeah.
So and then I read science fiction, I read comic books, I listen to popular music, I look for kind of new trends in art. I'm always kind of looking at the future. So most of my time is actually spent interviewing entrepreneurs, and I've got a pulse on the game at all times.
Yeah.
And it's because I interview entrepreneurs all the time. My record is now, it was 100 entrepreneurs in one day. I heard 100 pitches in one day. That's my record so far. See if you can beat it.
No,
Anybody
thank you.
out there, anybody out there, try to beat 100 pitches in one day.
We should put that in the Guinness Book of World Records. We should have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Submitted.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so most of my knowledge is tied to the future because these entrepreneurs come in and say, hey, this is what the future is going to look like.
I love that. Tim, this has been an incredible chat. I really do appreciate your time. My biggest takeaways here that I really liked is the way that you look at the future and the way that the principles that you use to analyze the businesses that you want to invest in, but also your outlook on change. Like that's really inspirational, actually. I've talked to a lot of founders kind of in similar positions as you are, and you're by far, I think, one that leans more to the innovator and future side of things in ways that the others don't, in grasping onto that. And I think that's absolutely amazing. So thanks, Tim.
Fun, I get to see it. Hey, I like your questions too. Thanks, Chris.
Good. Well, I've done
great fun to be on your show.
I've done like 500 interviews, so I'm kind of getting decent at it, but not in one day. I haven't done that yet. So we're going to wrap up there. If you just hang out for 1 minute, Tim, and we'll let you go. Listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again. Best place to find what you have going on, meet the Drapers, you guys.
Yeah, you can go to Draper TV,
Yep.
Draper.tv or drapertv.com. You can go to Draper VC, Draper.vc, and that's the website for all of Draper Associates, all of the venture work. And then you can go to draperuniversity.com or draperu.com, and you can hear more about our school. So, well, we call it a school. It's really like a human accelerator.
I like that.
Yeah.
Tim, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time. And listeners, thank you guys once again. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Goodbye, wait, you can also see me on Twitter, Tim Draper.
I'm going to put that link in there. We got Tim Draper and Twitter/X, and then LinkedIn and Instagram as well. So thanks,
Great.
Tim. Appreciate it.